Maycomb. Today we have two very special guests joining us on the show today, Jim and Scout Finch. These two lived in Maycomb during the Great Depression, and their father was a town hero. Thank you for inviting us on the show. It's so nice to be back. It's a pleasure to meet you both. So when was the last time you both visited Maycomb?
Well, this has been the first time in many, many years. We stopped visiting as much after our father Atticus passed away.
So where do you both live now?
Jim is living in West Virginia, and I'm living in New York City, and we moved about 30 years ago.
What made you want to leave town? From a young age, we realized that we just didn't fit in with the South. At the time, the majority of Maycomb just didn't have the same morals as our family did. Well, this town is sure not the same as it was 30 years ago. You both grew up during a hard time with racism and the Great Depression going on. Yes, we did. The Great Depression had a big impact on our town. A lot of people struggled to get by, and our father Atticus just worked so hard to provide for us, and he would just be so proud to see how far Maycomb has come. I'm sure he would. You two were very different compared to the rest of the kids. Yeah, and we were very fortunate. We grew up in such a nice home, and we had a housemaid, Calpurnia, who was more of a mother figure to us. We grew up with really good morals, too. The citizens of Maycomb are very interested to hear about the personal stories you two had as children, so let's get right into the interview. You lived on Main Residential Street? Correct. Tell me what the Maycomb life was like for you guys. I remember whenever Scout and I would go out in the summer and Atticus would give us boundaries to stay in between Mrs. DuBose's house and the Radley's house.
Someone I will never forget is Boo Radley.
Who is that?
The Radleys lived down the block. Jim, Dill, our old friend, and I were very intrigued by them. We'd always heard rumors about the family. Boo Radley was the youngest son. He was a malevolent phantom. The family preferred to keep Boo Radley inside, hidden in their home. Whenever something went wrong in the town, Boo would become a convenient excuse for the bad things that happened, and we weren't even sure if he existed. Yeah.
Did you ever try communicating with him?
Well, one day I was coming home from school and I spotted a piece of tinfoil stuck in a knothole in a tree in the Radley property, and despite my fear, I had the courage to go over and see it, and it turned out to be 2 pieces of gum.
This started to become more frequent, and sometimes after school, when we were walking home, we would see more items in the tree. And at first we thought this was someone's hiding spot, and then later we realized that he was trying to communicate with us. What were the other items?
Along with the 2 pieces of gum, we found a pack of gum, 2 old Indian head coins, gray twine, soap figures that were carved to look like Jem and I, an old spelling bee medal, and our greatest find was a pocket watch.
Wow, that's a lot. He must have really liked you two. At first I wasn't positive if it was Boo giving us those items. However, after narrowing it down, we realized that it was him. And so I wrote him a thank you note, and I went over to the tree to go give it to him, and Mr. Radley had covered up the hole with cement. I bet the 3 of you were very curious as to what went on inside the Radley house.
Yes, we were.
I will always remember that time I lost my pants when we snuck into the Radley's yard. I want to hear about this. So one summer night, the 3 of us decided to sneak onto the Radley's property. We wanted to peek in the back window, and I know that Scout didn't want to be there, but we needed her to help lift Dill up. And Dill did not see anything. I can't see anything.
Someone's coming!
But Scout saw a shadow of a man coming, and so we ran off, and then we heard a gunshot, and so then I was trying to get through the fence, and my pants got stuck, so I just had to leave them there.
I can still picture Atticus's face when he saw you in your underwear.
Did anyone get shot? Well, Miss Maudie, who was a good neighbor of ours, had told us after that that he was trying to shoot at a black man who was in his yard. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. I cannot imagine what would happen nowadays if someone were to do that. So did you get your pants back? Yes, I did. It took a lot of courage for me to go back there and look for my pants. I mean, I wasn't even sure if I was going to find them, and I was also scared I was going to get shot. However, I did find them on the fence, and they were folded and everything.
That was a wild night. I remember this one time that Jem had rolled me down the street in a tire, and I felt so nauseous. The tire was going so fast, and I crashed into the Radleys' porch. I ran away after realizing that I was in the Radleys' yard, and I forgot to grab the tire. Jem had the courage to go back and grab the tire, and I never told him this, but when I was by the house, I heard laughter from the inside, and that's when I knew that Boo Radley was still alive.
Oh, wow. Thinking about rolling in a tire makes me dizzy. So, Jim, you mentioned the name Miss Maudie. Tell me more about her. Miss Maudie, she lived across the street from us, and she was never inside her house. She was always outside gardening, and we loved her.
She was one of the few adults that I respected and admired at the time. She acted the same around kids as she did adults, and I think her and Atticus had a lot of the same values. I remember one winter, Miss Maudie's house caught on fire. Atticus woke us up, and all the neighbors were out there trying to help her. Luckily, the fire truck got there before the fire spread to other houses, but her house burned to the ground. I remember going up to her and asking if she was okay, and she didn't mourn over her loss. Miss Maudie always looked at the bright side of things, and that has made a big impact on my life.
So, Miss Maudie didn't care that everything she had was gone?
Not one bit. She was a character who knew the value of life over the value of possessions.
That night, I also remember Atticus went inside the burning house and saved Miss Maudie's favorite chair, and he was so brave for doing that. That was very nice of Atticus to save her chair. I know, he cared so much for others. Can you tell me more about Atticus? Well, as everyone knows in Macomb, Atticus was a lawyer, and he was the defense attorney for Tom Robinson. The people in Macomb had high respect for him. He was one of the few residents at the time who believed in racial equality. During the trial, many people gave him a hard time for defending a black man, and he didn't care. Like, he knew what was right, and he stuck with that. I once heard that he was the deadest shot in Macomb.
Yeah, Jem and I were very surprised when we learned about his hidden talent.
How did you learn about it?
Well, one day, Jem and I were outside, and we saw this dog roaming our neighborhood. And Calpurnia, she knew it was rabid, and she called Atticus to come and take a look at it. And soon enough, Atticus came with Heck Tate, the police officer. Heck wanted Atticus to shoot the dog because Heck couldn't shoot well.
And sure enough, Atticus goes out in the street and he kills the dog in one shot. I was shocked. We had never known about his talent. Miss Maudie had told us that back in the day he was the deadest shot in Macomb, so that was a surprise. Did this change your perception of him? Well, before this, Scout and I had always thought that he was kind of a boring dad and wasn't as cool as the others who played outside with their kids. However, I learned a valuable lesson. I realized that it didn't matter if Atticus could do anything. He was a gentleman, and that was the most important. So I know you both said that Calpurnia was a mother-like figure to you guys.
Yes, she was. Calpurnia became the housekeeper to help us with cooking, cleaning, and keeping us two in line. She encouraged us to understand and be mindful of others' failures and circumstances, and she was a great role model for us.
Her views and experiences definitely shaped our outlook on discrimination and equality, and she was just a very strong woman. Well, I remember this one time she took us to her church. It was called the First Purchase, and this was because it was bought with the first earnings of the freed slaves. When we got to the church, everyone was so welcoming. They all respected our father a lot.
After that happened, I realized that Cal had two different lives.
What do you mean?
Well, it was almost as if she had two different languages. Blacks back then did not receive a good education, so she kind of adjusted her language to fit in with the community that she was in. She had the ability to adapt to the sort of proper English of the white community and then the English of that, black community.
What was racism like? Macomb was a very racist town, and of course things have changed over the years. However, people our age just didn't treat blacks equally. People such as Tom Robinson did not hurt anyone. However, everyone attacked him because of his skin color. How did you both feel when Atticus decided to defend Tom Robinson?
Well, I remember Atticus told me many times that he was defending Tom because he valued equality and justice. He told us that if he didn't defend Tom, that whatever he told Jem and me would mean nothing. By him saying those things to me, I knew he was doing the right thing. I felt protective of him because I didn't want people who were racist to be mean to him, which they often were.
I knew that my father was a strong man. However, at times I got very defensive. We never wanted our father to be disappointed in us, and so we tried really hard whenever someone was making fun of him to just stay cool and not say anything. I bet it was hard to keep your feelings to yourself. Very. I will never forget the time when I did explode when Mrs. Dubose was saying mean things about our father. Mrs. Dubose? She was a lady who lived on our street, and she was very old and cranky and would always yell at Scout and I whenever we passed her house. What did you do? Well, one day Scout and I were walking past her house, and she was saying really mean things about Atticus, and I just had it. So I went up to her camellia bush and I ripped up all of her flowers. My father made me apologize for doing this. At the time, it seemed kind of odd to me that he made me do that. As a punishment, my father made me read to Mrs. Dubose every day after school for a month.
I would go with Jem every day to provide him with courage and support because I knew he didn't want to go.
How long did you have to read to her? I had to read to her for a month. At first, the sessions were cut short by Mrs. Dubose's strange fits. Consuming 6 apples apiece within half an hour. At first, they
Spell it out.
Entertained.
Entertained.
And entertained thoughts of sharing their fruit. But as the months went on, the sessions got longer and she was quieter. This way caught up quickly, but not quickly enough to avoid being lost. He pulled his leg up to become entangled. One day I got the news that Mrs. Dubose had passed away. Atticus told me that she was a morphine addict. She wanted to die on her own terms. However, she needed help with coping with the pain. So me reading to her was her distraction. Mrs. Dubose was a courageous woman. How did you feel when you heard the news? I didn't know what to do when I got the news. She left me with a white camellia flower from her bush to show that she accepted my apology, and that meant a lot. Mrs. Dubose made a huge impact on my life. She showed me what true courage was. She taught me patience and to have tolerance for others, and I really cannot thank her enough for that. To all of the Macomb viewers, we will be right back after the commercial break for a part 2 of the childhood life of Jim and Scout.